Hello and welcome back to St Michael's Hill. Thank you very much for joining me on what is going to be the third part of the new layout series. If you haven't yet watched part 1 and part 2, I probably suggest that you stop watching this and check out those videos now. I will leave a link to the playlist in the I button now, well worth checking out just to see what the plan for the new layout is. If you're here to just see how these baseboards go together, then by all means hang around and we'll get on with that in just a second. Just before we start, I just want to say a massive thank you to all the new subscribers that are coming on board. There are more and more every week, and it's frankly mad, but thank you. I really appreciate the support. If you haven't got involved in my competition for 1,000 subscribers yet, you've got a couple of weeks left to do that. So I'm basically looking for video shout outs for small channels, so under 1,000 subscribers. If you give a shout out to one of those in a video, leave a link in the description on the video that I basically promote the competition in. So I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and I'll enter you into a prize draw to win a £50 DCC train automation voucher. So if you haven't done that, please do. It would be great to kind of get as many people involved as possible. So then, on to the main part of today's video, which is going to be building some baseboards. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be using the open frame technique. So each of these boards is going to be built as a simple kind of framework. They're going to be modular as well, so they'll be easy to take apart if I ever need to move the layout at any point. Hopefully that won't be the case. Should stay here for many a year. Certainly no plans to move, but you never know what life throws at you. So I just want to make sure that if the worst comes to the worst, I can simply take apart each of the modules and move it to a new location. As such, I'm building 14 separate baseboard modules. Each will have a plywood frame, and then some will have plywood tops for the fiddle yard, for example, whilst others will have a kind of track bed that will be raised above the open frame to allow me to kind of build scenery around the track work and make it look far more natural. In this video, I'm going to show you how I build the frame for each of these. So as you can see, there's some equipment in front of me, which I'll quickly run through now, and then I will show you the technique that I'm using to get this to go together. Before I introduce what each of these bits of equipment is and why I've got them, I just want to make something very, very clear. I'm no woodworking expert whatsoever. In fact, it's one of the areas of the hobby that I've struggled with the most in the past, even more probably than electrics, which you've probably heard me moaning about many times on this channel. I've really not been able to kind of do woodwork too well. And maybe as a kind of example of this, I will give you a kind of quick demonstration of what I mean on the previous layout. As you can see on these boards, it's pretty much nothing that's straight or flush. It's basically been stuck together with a load of wood glue. As you can see, the wood, you can almost see how tough this wood is. But yeah, nothing's kind of straight, nothing's lined up. And it's flat, you know. The top section's okay, but even down here you can see there's kind of sections that just aren't quite right, and that's probably where the wood's slightly bowed and hasn't been kind of pulled in enough and held together with clamps or moved when it's been gluing. So yeah, you can see that really this is a bit of a disaster on a woodworking front. So as you can see from the original St Michael's Hill, the woodwork is really not perfect, and that comes down to a few things. Firstly, I was using the wrong materials, and secondly, I didn't have the right tools for the job. I'll tell you what I mean. So in terms of the materials, that layout was built using a baseboard made of 12mm birch ply. Lots of people I see suggest using kind of birch ply and all that sort of stuff, and it's a solid wood. As you've seen, there's no warping on that layout whatsoever. It's solid as a rock. However, birch ply is very dense and is incredibly tough to work with. So when I was using hand saws to cut all the pieces, it was an absolute workout to get through all that stuff. Now, part of that was I probably had old tools, so old saws that weren't maybe as sharp as they could have been, but the wood itself was an absolute nightmare to get through. The second thing when I said I didn't have the right tools is I didn't have a lot of what is here, or at least some of what is here. So I was just using kind of basic techniques where I was gluing and nailing and screwing wood together, but with no real kind of knowledge of what I was doing, no clamps to hold anything properly in place. And it gives you the result that you've seen. It's not bad, but it's certainly not great. When it came to this layout, I really wanted to make sure that I made my life easier by using the right materials and the right tools. I sat down with James at DCC Train Automation and spoke to him a little bit about the customer layouts he builds and the techniques he uses. And a lot of that is what you see in this video. So thank you to him for that. But there's lots that anyone can kind of use from this. So let me talk you through the equipment that you need to kind of build these baseboard frames up. One of the most important things when you're basically working with wood these days is a good wood glue. I've just gone for some Gorilla wood glue. It's available widely and I'll leave a link in the description below. But you'll often find that the glue itself ends up being stronger than the wood that you're working with. So it's very, very strong stuff and very, very useful. The next thing is a drill. Again, anyone that you have is perfectly useful, but this is also a screwdriver as well, which makes life a little bit easier. Again, I will leave a link in the description to a kind of decent drill, but most people have got drills around. That's not too much of a problem. I've also got a square just to make sure that everything is going to be kind of at right angles, and a tape measure as well for measuring out sections of wood. Pencil just to mark out any measurements, and a brush to kind of spread any glue. And then I guess the star of the show is this thing here. So this is Craig K4 pocket hole joinery jig. Now I'll talk a little bit more about pocket hole joinery in a minute, but effectively it's just a way of getting wood together in a very strong manner. But this little jig makes life very easy when it comes to getting all the woodwork together. Alongside it is some pocket hole joinery screws. Again, just a slightly kind of different screw to one that you might be used to, but they're specially made for pocket hole joinery. A couple of things here is a drill bit on the left hand side, again a speciality drill piece for pocket hole joinery, and a screwdriver bit that is again made for the pocket hole screws. Now this comes in, or the jig comes in a kit. Most of this comes with it. The screws are separate, although the kit does come with a few. So this is available kind of online for kind of 70 to 80 quid, which is really not a massive outlay, especially when you're kind of working on a project like this. Once you're done with it, if you're never going to use it again, you can sell it, or you can obviously keep hold of it and use it for other sorts of things. But it's a really nice kit and makes woodwork certainly very easy. The final thing I have is a bar clamp, and that is basically just to hold the wood in place whilst I'm kind of using the drill and the screwdriver and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very important to kind of have something like this just to make your life easier, make sure that those joints are kind of all correct and square. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what pocket hole joinery is, just briefly. If you don't know what it is, or if you do know what it is, you might want to skip ahead a few minutes in the video, but just for those who don't know, it's a very strong way of fixing two pieces of wood together at a right angle like this. Now the kind of risk is if you go straight into a piece of wood, if you were to say drill or drill or screw a screw into there, there's kind of, because of the way the kind of wood joint is, especially with this ply, it's not the strongest of joints. You might end up splitting the wood, especially with slightly thinner wood, or it's just not a very strong joint. Now, what pocket hole joinery allows is for a screw to go in at an angle similar to this, although probably a slightly greater angle like that. As soon as you do that, it's a lot stronger. So to get that screw in at the right angle, in the right way, we need to drill a hole. So supplied kind of drill bit that comes in has got a tapered end basically. So there's a thick end or thick drill bit with a kind of tapered thin end on the end. This allows for a hole to be drilled all the way through, which through the first piece of wood, that allows the whole of the screw head to be hidden, and then the tapered section lines up with the screw, and you can basically then screw it into the other piece of wood. Now, the jig that is supplied by Craig allows you to kind of do that simply. So I'm going to run you through how to use it. So to drill holes into your pieces of wood, it's very, very simple. You basically slide the piece of wood into the jig, pull this handle, and that fixes the piece of wood in place. The next stage involves drilling the holes into the wood. You can see this kind of chrome nut here, and effectively that allows you to adjust the height of this section here. Now, you might be able to see on the camera that I've got it set for 18mm on the side, which is the thickness of my wood. Once that's all done, you then can effectively drill down through these holes. Now, in this instance, I'm basically align the wood centrally into the jig, and then I'm going to use this hole and this hole to basically supply me with the kind of correct measurements. So it's just a simple case of attaching the drill bits to the drill. This section on the drill is actually a movable basically guard that only allows the drill to go a certain distance into the jig. So once that's in place, you can just hold it down and then drill the hole. As you can see, the drill only went down as far as the collar, and again I'll drill one into this side. Once that's done, it's a simple case of just unclamping the piece of wood, and I'll show you what you're left with. So there you go, there's 2 holes in there now, and you might be able to see inside the hole there is actually kind of a smaller hole where the drill bit is landed. Now, as you can see, that's pretty much flush. There's a little bit of kind of splintering, which if you want to, you can sand away. The screw is then placed inside that hole and can be tightened up all the way, so it appears through the bottom of the piece of wood and out the other side. Each of my baseboards has been designed in exactly the same way. So there's 2 long sections on the sides, and then 4 cross beams that are all exactly the same length along the middle. And now the cross beams are the ones which I drill holes into. As you can see, I drill 4 holes into each board, 2 at each end. This one here has the same holes, but obviously on the inside to kind of keep the outside looking kind of neat. As you can see at that end, it's the holes are on the inside. So in terms of designing your boards, it's completely up to you, the sizes that you want to do. I've probably been a little bit over-engineered wise in that these boards are fairly small. So each one of my modules roughly is, well, the standard size is this one, which is a 3 by 2 foot board. Generally, they're actually kind of done in centimeters, so I think they're 900 by 600, but roughly works out to 3 by 2. There are a few bigger boards. There are a few that are kind of slightly different shapes. You could easily get away with probably 6 by 4 in this way, but it's kind of all comes down to what you want and all that sort of stuff. So whichever method you use, you can still kind of use this joinery technique, and I still believe that poplar ply is the best material to use. So once all these holes are drilled, it's just a case of fitting them in place. So it will be a case of working on one side first. So I'll probably remove one of the side sections and then go along each side, clamping the boards in place whilst after they've been glued, and then screw in. So I'll show you how that's done. A little tip for those people who are using plyboard or plywood, on the ends here, it's quite a porous kind of material, so once you glue, a lot of it will just disappear into the grain of the wood, which might kind of stop the adhesion to the side. So what I tend to do is a very thin layer and just literally push it right in to those holes to start with. Once that's kind of dried a little bit, you'll find that the glue that then you put on top stays where it should be and makes good contact with the wood. So well worth doing that. You can also do it with kind of a watered down glue solution as well. Just soaks up through and then obviously goes hard and kind of fills those holes. If you're going for a neat glue like I am, just make sure you kind of push down into the thing, and you can already see where the holes are starting to kind of open up again where the glue's gone down. It's always worth just doing that to kind of hold that glue in, and once you then glue it to a piece of wood, you'll get a better join. So it's now just a simple case of attaching one piece of wood to the other. To do that, first I'm going to put some wood glue on the end, as we kind of said. It's just a simple case of popping it in and up against the piece that's there. I'm going to use basically my eye and also this square here, just to make sure that the joint is pretty much at a right angle. You can always feel with kind of 2 butts of wood, so just kind of put your finger up either side, just feel for kind of flatness, and then also use the square to make sure that it's a right angle. There we go, and I'm pretty happy with that. It's pretty much there. Now I'm going to use the bar clamp now, just to make sure that that's fully together. This can be a little bit tricky at first. You just need to place the clamp kind of over it, and then I like to just put it down the center of the piece of wood and clamp it together. Just checking as you go the kind of adjustment. When the clamp's there, it can kind of try and move it around a little bit, but generally that's pretty good. There we go. Once it's in, you'll see the glue just kind of pop out of the corner a little bit, but as you can tell, that's all together on a perfect right angle. So once that's done, it's time to maybe clear away that kind of ooze of glue. You can either use a cloth or your finger, and then I'll be ready to put the screws in. So I'll be back in just a second. When it comes to the screws, it's very simple. The screwdriver bit that has been supplied with the kit has a magnetic end, so you can just hold the drill bit on, or the screw on there, and if I just move it to one side a little bit, you'll see that it just goes up inside, and then you just basically screw it home. You just now need to repeat the process with the top screw. And there you go. Once that screws on, you can safely remove the clamp. That will be held in place now. Now you've got a very strong joint there already. I can easily lift that up with kind of one hand, and effectively the weight can be taken through the joint. So it's a very simple kind of join, but what you're left with is a nice flush and strong join. So basically you need to do that another 7 times, and once that's done, you'll have a complete board. Once you've attached all 4 crossbars to the bottom one, I tend to then place glue on the end of each of these ones before putting it back on its side and fixing the other sidebar. I tend to do I tend to screw both ends and then undo the middle ones afterwards. But so far this has probably taken me 5 minutes, if that, to get to this stage. So it's a very, very quick way of working as well. It really hasn't taken long to get this board together. So yeah, not only is it fast, strong, it's easy, and can make people who are frightened of woodwork fairly confident fairly quickly. So now that's all done, and there's the result. Obviously it's been a little bit quicker on camera, but it's probably taken me 15 minutes at tops to kind of get this board done, and as you can see, I'm pretty pleased with it. It looks pretty professional. The screws are all hidden away. Incidentally, you can buy, and the kit actually comes with a few samples, pieces of wood that fill in these holes. So if you wanted to, you could kind of pop those in and then sand it all down, and it will look very, very nice indeed. In terms of the rest of the boards, I've basically finished them all now, so excuse the IKEA unit, which is going to be part of the storage, but there are boards you can see here, and there's more boards down there. So in terms of all of these frames, probably they were completed, I did half of them in one day. The others have been kind of over smaller periods of time, so you could probably get kind of enough to fill a decent sized garage. It's going to be 14, like I said, 14 boards. They're all put together in probably 2 days worth of time, although I spread it out over quite a few days. But yeah, yesterday I had a day off work, so I've managed to get half of them done in one day. And yeah, very, very nice overall. Very, very pleased with the method. And I think the thing is, like I said, I had a real fear about doing this. I looked into so many other options, including other people building them for me, kit baseboards, all this sort of stuff, which was either going to be very expensive or would probably leave me with the feeling that I could have tried it myself. And I'm so glad I did. It's not difficult. I think sometimes you see people's videos and they kind of come across like they're experts, and maybe they are at woodwork, and it just looks so easy for them and probably so difficult. But I'm just trying to let you know that actually it is very, very easy to do this if you have the right tools and you use the right materials. I can't stress those 2 points enough. So the next thing for these boards is to kind of be given legs. I will probably be doing that in a separate part of this video. I think we've probably had enough today, but the next section will be legs and tops. Again, I'm going to try and keep this modular, so all these sections will be bolted together, and I'll probably also use a method similar for the legs as well. So maybe I'll cover all that in the next part of these videos. I think in the meantime, I'm going to leave you with some running shots, and I hope to see you again very soon on St Michael's Hill. Thanks very much, and see you soon. Bye-bye.